Yes, that should everybody live now. Yeah, there we go.
Yep. So, welcome to the Estimating Community Practice Controls and Skills Authority CASA regular webinar on everything cost engineering. Welcome, Dr. Andrew McClintock, is the AI program manager and chartered physicist, specialising in AI strategy, data transformation, program delivery across defence, nuclear, regulated public sector environments for Amentum. And over to you, Andrew.
Great stuff. Thank you for the warm welcome, Paul. I'll just bring up my slides I've got here. And we'll go on full screen. Show present view. So hopefully we can all see that.
Yes, thank you.
Fantastic stuff. So beyond accuracy, ethical AI in cost estimation. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all so much for joining, or if you're watching this on YouTube, hello in the future. Today, I want to talk about something that is becoming increasingly important across project delivery, infrastructure, defence, and major programs: the growing use of artificial intelligence in cost estimation. Now, when people hear artificial intelligence in this context, the conversation usually focuses on efficiency, faster estimates, better forecasting, improved accuracy. And again, I shouldn't say accuracy, I should say robustness, because Andy gets very cross with me when I say accuracy in this context. But the paper Andy and I wrote takes a different position. We argue that the real challenge is not simply whether artificial intelligence makes estimates better. The bigger question is, what happens when organisations begin trusting AI outputs in decisions involving billions of pounds, public money, risk, and accountability? Because estimates are not just numbers, they influence approvals, funding decisions, procurement strategies, risk allocation, political confidence, and public trust. And once AI becomes embedded in those decisions, we are not simply introducing a new technology tool, we are changing how judgment, authority, and responsibility operates within organisations. So just before I move on to the paper and what we talk about today, I just want to introduce the authors for the paper I'm referring to today, and I'll also post a PDF of the paper I'm referring to in the chat later on. So the first author is Professor Andrew McClintock, who is a visiting professor at the University of Bath, a visiting fellow at Cranfield University, and the image of him there on the left side is where he just received his Lifetime Contribution Award from the Controls and Skills Authority, so incredibly well done and well deserved. Again, I'm not normally this nice about Andy, but I am in this case. He is definitely the brains for the cost estimation work. I'm more the AI person. So on the right here, you've got myself, Dr. Andrew McClintock, chartered physicist. I originally started my career doing a PhD sponsored by EDF Energy, and the PhD was twofold. One half of it was mathematical modelling of the graphite core used in advanced gas-cooled reactors. Essentially, over time, they begin to crack, and then again, nuclear and cracks probably aren't the best combination of words, but it doesn't actually affect the performance whatsoever. It's just used as an indicator. So what we're trying to do is better understand why the cracking is occurring. The other half of my PhD was the actual material characterization side of things, where we're actually able to measure the thermal expansion down at the micro scale, which had never been done before, so it's pretty exciting. And alongside the PhD, I was also a university physics teacher for 3 years, which I absolutely loved. I then left academia for industry and joined Amentum, which is where I currently am. Originally, I worked with the Nuclear Waste Services, where they are building Europe's largest geological disposal facility, which is where all the nuclear waste is going to go in the future for these exciting new reactors we've got on the way. Again, they've been overshadowed by artificial intelligence, which is a real shame, but it's just the world that we live in at the moment. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting nuclear things coming along the way. Then when I moved out of that area, I started working on digital transformation. And then alongside all the work I've done, I've just always been fascinated by artificial intelligence ever since it became quite popular with the development of large language models like ChatGPT, which are becoming more and more usable. which then leads me to my role at the moment as the AI lead in our digital and data team. So Andy and I have just finished some really interesting work with the Ministry of Defence, which was upskilling their small to medium enterprise supply chain on how to use AI and a couple of other digital things. Then we're also working with the SAMI, which stands for the Saudi Arabian Military Industries, and their digital transformation for their garages and how they're going to implement artificial intelligence in the near future. And again, I'll always say this about artificial intelligence, that it's the light at the end of the tunnel. There's a lot of things you have to have in place first before you can even come close to implementing it. So before we start discussing ethics, I think it's important to pause for a second and ask something surprisingly basic. What do you all think artificial intelligence is? I'll give you a moment just to think in your head what we could be. Because artificial intelligence has become one of those terms that means everything and nothing at the same time. The amount of times I'm hearing it saying it uses artificial intelligence, this, that, it doesn't, it's just using a computer program. Again, it's another hyped word. So imagine some of you just thought in your head then when I said, what is AI? Some of you thought science fiction, like Terminator 2 when they start talking about AI and superconductors. Again, superconductors is also one of my favourite things to talk about because that's what my master's dissertation was on. Some of you will have thought about large language models when I asked what AI is, like ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, Copilot. Those are what people tend to use mainly, is what I've gathered from talking to people. And others may think about robotics. Again, I've got a robot lawnmower, I've got a robot vacuum called Mo, Farah, and the Elon Dust. Unbelievable bits of technology that can go around and actually work out what's happening around them. 10 out of 10 recommend. But most of the AI we're discussing in cost estimation is actually much narrower than that. At its core, AI is usually about recognizing patterns within data and then using those patterns to generate outputs or predictions. So, for example, identifying relationships between historical project variables, predicting likely cost overruns, spotting trends in procurement data, generating estimate narratives, forecasting risk exposure. The important thing is this: artificial intelligence does not understand projects in the way humans do. I'm going to say this again because it's so important. Artificial intelligence does not understand projects in the way humans do. It does not understand politics, stakeholder pressure, organization culture, or human behavior. It identifies statistical relationships, and that distinction matters enormously when we start using AI outputs in major decisions. What do we mean by ethics? When people hear AI ethics, they often assume it means something abstract or philosophical, something you'd maybe talk about when you ate pints in at the pub. But in practice, ethics is incredibly practical. Ethics ask questions like this: who is accountable when something goes wrong? Think about cars like fancy Teslas, where they can actually avoid crashes by steering and accelerating or braking for you. If that goes wrong, who is responsible for it? Another question we can ask is, can we explain how a decision was made? For example, okay, why was this cost estimate by AI? Why was it exactly 17,320,109 pounds and 87 pence? Because that is awfully, awfully precise. Another question, can assumptions be challenged? Is uncertainty being communicated honestly? Again, if you've used AI before, you will have definitely found out the hard way that AI can tend to be a people pleaser if you're not careful. Again, it comes down to a lot of prompt engineering. And the final question to think about is, are people becoming over-reliant on systems that they do not fully understand? Along the lines of, oh, we're doing this because AI said so. And again, I've got a good example of that later on in the slide deck. And actually, cost estimation already has ethical foundations built into it. Professional estimating guidance already emphasizes transparency of assumptions, treatment of uncertainty, professional judgment, and accountability for outputs. So our paper argues something important. The ethical challenge with AI is not introducing ethics into cost estimation for the first time. The ethical challenge is whether AI weakens principles that estimating professionals already rely upon. So when it comes to artificial intelligence, I tend to break it down into three broad tiers of generative AI. So the first one is what I call do the 80%. So I call it the 80-20 rule. This is where AI helps automate routine tasks. So think about something you guys do in, day out. That's just repetitive task. This is where we could use AI. Things like drafting reports, summarizing documents. Okay, there's a really interesting article here. Summarize it for me. Formatting outputs the way you prefer, or accelerating admin. It can do the 80% for you, but the last 20% is human intervention. You need to go in there, you need to check it, and ultimately as a user, you are fully accountable. The second tier is what I call crunching the numbers, the data analytics. This is where AI analyzes data sets to identify trends, anomalies, or insights. But I will say one important thing with this is remember that correlation does not equal causation. There is a wonderful website out there called The Onion that shows very unlikely trends. So for example, the number of car crashes across America correlate with the number of Nicolas Cage films released each year. It's a really fantastic website and it just completely blows the argument out the water. So I definitely recommend it after this call if you've got a few minutes to spare. And then the third tier of AI use is where things become significantly more complex. That is, make predictions. Once AI starts forecasting outcomes, recommending cost positions, or influencing major investment decisions, the ethics stakes become much, much higher. Because now the AI is no longer just supporting work, it is influencing judgment, and that's where this paper really sits. Traditional estimating methods. Let's start that again. Traditionally, cost estimating has always involved uncertainty. No estimator has ever had perfect information. So historically, we developed practices to manage uncertainty responsibly. We use things like expert judgment, historical analogies, bottom-up estimating, probabilistic analysis, contingency modeling. But critically, traditional estimating processes are usually transparent. You can ask questions like, Paul, what assumptions were used for this? Where's that data come from? Dawn, why certain judgments were made? And importantly, you can challenge the estimate. Human estimators can explain reasoning, and that visibility is crucial because the estimate itself is not just a calculation exercise, it's a communication exercise around uncertainty. How AI could help estimation. Now, to be clear, this paper is not about anti-AI. We're not Luddites, okay? We're going through the fourth industrial revolution with AI at the moment. It is here and it is here to stay, so get used to it. AI has some huge, huge, huge potential benefits. It can process vast data sets faster than humans can. It can identify hidden relationships within project information. But remember, correlation does not equal causation, as we discussed. It can help organizations benchmark projects, detect anomalies, model scenarios. So, okay, let's go through our risk register. Is this possible? Okay, what happens if this happens? Okay, what could the outcome of that be? What would that scenario look like? It's an incredibly powerful tool for things like that and improve forecasting consistency. But in highly complex programs, these capabilities could become transformational, particularly in sectors like defence, infrastructure, and nuclear, where projects involved enormous complexity and long time frames, up to hundreds of years in some cases. The problem is not capability. The problem is what happens organizationally once people begin to trust those outputs. The illusion of objectivity. Precision is not the same as truth. One of the biggest dangers of AI is that it often appears objective. If an AI system produces a detailed graph, confidence intervals, probability curves, sophisticated calculations, people might naturally assume it must be rigorous. And it's a danger, but numerical sophistication can create a false sense of certainty. An AI-generated estimate may look more precise than human estimates while actually hiding weak assumptions, bias training data, flawed logic, missing context. So let's jump into those a little bit deeper. So let's review bias training data. The golden rule of mathematical modelling, as my PhD supervisor said to me on day one, again, I'll tone down the language he used, but if you put crap into a model, you get crap out. At the end of the day, you can only judge how well a model performs on the data you've given it and the output it gives you. So let's take an example of this. Let's say we create an AI model based on some data where the contractor has vastly underestimated the cost to undercut the competitors to win the work. Do you think that's going to be a good model? And the answer is absolutely not. But let's take a good example. So there's a study on football commentators in the noughties where the findings showed that in those split-second decisions when the commentators were commentating live on a game, they found that they were more likely to say something negative about a person who was a non-white in those split-second decisions due to subconscious bias. So then say we create a model and train them on, okay, you're going to be a football commentator. Say that we've given them this data that's got subconscious bias in it. Then we're going to create models with subconscious bias, and it's dangerous. And this creates what we describe in the paper as automation bias. People begin deferring to the machine because it appears authoritative and should always challenge AI. That is, if you're going to take one thing away from today, is question it, judge it, try and understand why that logic is coming from it. So I said I was going to give you a couple of hallucination examples. The first one on the left there is Deloitte issues a refund for error-ridden Australian government report that used AI. And the second one there on the right is West Midlands Police Chief apologises after AI error used to justify Tel Aviv ban. So essentially, Deloitte had to give a partial refund to the Australian government after a report contained apparent AI-generated hallucinations, included fabricated references and incorrect legal citations. If you don't know what a hallucination is, essentially, it's when AI just makes something up. Again, like I said earlier, it can be a people pleaser if you're not careful. So you need to constantly check the work it creates, which obviously Deloitte didn't do in this case. And the second example there, West Midlands Police also apologised after AI content contributed to inaccurate information linked to football intelligence reporting. To put that into perspective, an Israeli football team from Tel Aviv were visiting, I think it was Aston Villa for a football game. Then before any football games, police do the research to see what the fans are like. Traditionally, have they been quite violent? Have they been quite bad? But in this case, the individual there used AI on Copilot to ask what it was like last time these fans were crossing the city. And it said, oh, it's something like that, riots and everything like that, because the AI hallucinated. And then as a result, they actually cancelled them from coming along, and then they found out why. So always check the output of AI is my recommendations. Now, these examples are important because they show something critical. Hallucinations are not always obvious. The outputs can sound professional, structured, and confident, and that is exactly why governance matters. So, ethical risks identified in the paper. So the paper Andy and I wrote, it identifies several major ethical risk areas. One of them is the reinforcement of historical bias. if a historical project data contains optimism bias or systematic underestimation, AI systems may simply normalize and scale those problems without you knowing about it. Another issue is opacity. Many AI systems lack a clear line of sight between input and output. This creates challenges around audibility and professional challenge, as we discussed. We also discussed responsible dilution. If an estimate is partially generated by AI, who is accountable? Is it the estimator? Is it the software provider that gave them the AI software? Is it the organization it's from? Or is it the model developer? And finally, one of the most important ideas in the paper, AI can improve numerical precision without improving decision quality. That distinction is absolutely critical and applies until nobody's clearly accountable. So practical governance questions. Whenever organizations adopt AI for estimation, they should pause and ask themselves some comfortable questions. Where is our data going? And I don't know if any of you have seen this in the news recently, but Pokemon Go, do you know the game you go around with your phone, you can scan like real life area and collect Pokemon, bit of gamification. It's been going on for about 10 years now, and they've actually sold the rights to a fast food delivery place. I think it's like something similar to Uber Eats, where Pokemon Go's actually scanned the world for them, and they've got more accurate maps than Google, and they've got some AI specialist robotics that can go around and deliver food for you. And again, it's in the agreement you sign with them. At the end of the day, Pokemon Go is completely free, and you've got to ask yourself the question of why is it free? And in this case, it's because you are the product, because it is free, and you've essentially gone off and you've scanned the world for them. So going back to it, where is our data actually going? You've got to be so careful what you put into AI, especially if it's confidential. The next question is, can we legally use this information in external AI systems, which again links to the top point of where's the data going? How good is our historical data really? Is it just a bit of a guess, or is it really detailed? You've got to question it. And like I said previously, if you put crap into your model, you're going to get crap out of the model. That's how it works. Because many organizations discover very quickly that their data quality is nowhere near as mature as they assumed. Again, that's the case more often than not. And perhaps most importantly, are we preserving professional challenge, or are we slowly creating environments where confidence in AI outputs replaces critical thinking? And I really hope the answer to that is no. At the end of the day, I don't think AI is going to replace anyone. I think it's going to make us more powerful, but ultimately as humans, we are accountable and we need to go in and check. So I'm going to leave you with a closing message. AI should support professional judgment, not replace it. The conclusion of the paper is ultimately balanced. AI absolutely has the potential to improve cost estimation, but ethical AI governance is not simply about making models more accurate. It's about preserving transparency, accountability, challenge, professional judgment, and trust. Because once AI becomes embedded within organizational decision making, the real risk is not that the machines become intelligent. The real risk is that humans stop questioning them. And I think that is possibly the most important conversation we need to have as AI adoption accelerates across our industries. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. There was an awful lot in that I was like, oh, that's new, that's interesting. That's I want to discuss that. I want to challenge. No, I want to challenge it. Yeah. So I think we've also had some comments in the chat. So no, really, thank you. You should have been speaking at our conference last week. Maybe next year you can come and speak with an update of what of some of the topics you've just discussed in that. But I have set a Q&A up, and I've also set a chat up. So I don't know if there's anything else. I know we've had a comment, and I don't know if actually he's still on the call. I think he has just gone, which is a shame. So Samuel has written. I don't know if you can see it in the chat, actually, Andrew. Because there's a lot of words here. It says, I'd love to know your thoughts on my current AI worry in the estimating space. And then he goes on to say, AI is replacing the tasks that are generally undertaken by entry-level members of staff as a development/learning opportunity, this being the 80-20 rule, with the estimating space already being a reducing resource due to less people having the experience available to estimate. Well, my worry is that the implementation of AI will accelerate this already existing issue. The 20 of the 80-20 requires experience and knowledge to be able to quality assure the output and ensure that there are no occurrences of crowd pleasing or hallucinations, which historically you only gain from doing the 80 early in your career. Well, I could add some things to that from a skills perspective, but over to you, Andrew.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one, isn't it? And I think if we're not careful, in 10, 20 plus years, there's going to be a massive deficit of skilled individuals in this field, because it is getting quite easy to say, oh, we can just chuck AI through that. But actually, if you're early on in your career, it's important that you go through that process and you understand where it's going from. And then the worry is that these sort of people that don't get the experience then replace these people that were sort of making these decisions at the top. And then all of a sudden, nobody knows how it actually works. Because, like I said in the talk, we're becoming over reliant on the machines themselves. So I think it's a real worry. And I think
it is a worry, although I will relate it back to, and Paul, I'll ask your opinion in a minute as well. I'll relate it to back when I joined the oil and gas industry, which was now nearly 19-20 years ago, and the start of the low cost, high value centres were coming into play. And we had to send an awful lot of work across to those, which meant that we didn't have the people coming in to learn the trade, but at the same time we were then asking those that were at that level to do the management of the work that was coming out of the high value centres. So it led to a double-edged storm, because those people in the high value centres were leaving because they got the experience, they got the quality, they got the skills, and they would then move on to the next organisation that started these offices off, and so on. It went round in a circle. But what I am now seeing in my world, or the world I was in before I joined CASA, is that those companies are now recognising there's a huge gap, and they're now working out how to bring those people back into and train them up. So I wonder if we're actually going to go full circle from an AI perspective as well.
Yeah, definitely by the sounds of it. But I think it's a positive if you're in this field, start rubbing your hands together, because in about 20 years' time, it'll be worth more than gold.
Yeah, yes. Paul, did you want to add anything at this point?
Yeah, I was reflecting on AI, and so recently I was marking a thesis which was laser etching copper and aluminium foil. It was to do with lithium-ion battery manufacturing. So some really specialized material properties, surface energies, wettability, and how it impacted lithium-ion battery design and manufacturability. That's really detailed engineering knowledge.
Yeah.
And then if you think of, say, another thing you might think about is say this Gen AI, where if you look deep into the development about the architecture and how there's this transformer architecture and there's self-attention algorithms. There's a lot of detail underneath the bonnet of AI and also cost engineering. And also the implication that suddenly everything is a data point. Whereas I think, like, cost engineers, as engineers, how can you look in, have the knowledge base, a detailed knowledge base of the engineering to add value to business by advising about the engineering implications and the cost implications of detailed engineering know-how. Whereas you've got your hands on something which can find information and process it and present it very, very efficiently. Well, that's not providing a deep understanding and trusted source of advice to contribute to a product development process. So I just think there's a lot of depth in cost engineering, which and you see it in the people. They just perhaps a little bit insulted that. Hang on a minute. There's more to life than processing data, and it's almost like driving with your eyes closed. Maybe sometimes that's a really informal, even emotional response. I don't know, but it's just that's the problem I see. Like there's this deep engineering problem, and a machine which can process information, and one is not the answer to another. Perhaps can't replace people with information processing. I don't.
Yes.
Yeah. So the role of the cost engineer, I don't see as particularly endangered. I just think maybe adapted to, because Gen AI presents information efficiently and in novel ways to make your job easier, but it doesn't replace the know-how and deep smarts you get as a cost engineer, which every company really needs, I think.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone's arguing against that, though.
Yeah, no, agree, Paul. Is there any other comments or questions from anybody else that's on the call here? If you want to put a comment in the chat.
But it's interesting what you were saying there, Paul, as well. And I'd always describe AI as quite surface level, where it looks pretty good, but as you sort of go into the detail, it doesn't understand it. And I think the sort of way it would summarize it is, if you've ever had to get an emergency plumber to your house and you've paid far too much money, and they'll walk up to one thing, they'll hit it with a hammer, they'll twist a wrench, and then they'll fix it. And it's about 30 years worth of experience in that individual's head. And you're not paying for the time, you're paying for the knowledge. And I don't think AI will ever replace that. And like what you're saying there about like everything you've described there, Paul, I'd say AI is almost like a signposter where you could build a repository and you have a chat to a chatbot and say, okay, I'm working on this project. We're going to build a geological disposal facility out to sea. Do we have any previous examples of boring under the sea? And it'll say yes, X, Y, and Z, and it'll send them in your way. That to me is using AI efficiently. Or if you've written a report and you've got some things bullet pointed across it, okay, just help me gather my thoughts what I've put here. That's how you should be using it.
I mean, if it can collate lessons learned from projects that you don't, and you often lessons learned are the last things, but the most important things that you do or don't do, depending on the project. And if AI can actually do that deep dive and create a lessons learned database against every project without it requiring humans to do, that has got to be a benefit for us moving forward.
I think as well with like productivity, if you do have a deep smart and has got access to 10 technical papers and then can just put it in the Gen AI and say, please identify the most important parameters I should be thinking about because, and it just goes bang, there you go. And you might instantly validate that and say, yeah, I agree with that. Or, so it could be a major productivity tool for everyone at all levels.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then you can start going beyond the screens when you introduce something called AI agents, when they can go off and start doing things. So something interesting we've been developing at Amentum is for Sellafield is where it's called thread safe, where you have all these different documents and it manages to scan each document and it links each document together. So you get this really fancy node showing how documents link together. And it's just like signposting going through it. And I'm doing something as well similar in my own time. I've got a Mac Mini because they're really powerful devices where you can download your entire chat GPT, all your chats, and then you can use an AI agent to go through them and you can create something called your second digital brain. So essentially links all your different conversations together and you get this fantastic array of nodes. So I'm currently trying to build an agent that does that for me. But the potential there is crazy. But again, would you trust it seeing all your information? And you could ask that question of where is my information going, which always makes me a little bit nervous.
Such a powerful information processing and development device, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah.
Put all this together and give me the answer.
That's absolutely it, yeah. And then obviously the other downside to AI is obviously we're having to build more and more data centers to actually have all this processing power, then sort of the carbon emissions as well, which is a genuine thing we should be aware of and where it's going. You can sort of hear things like, oh, water's running out for the cooling system. Water's not going to run out, it just needs remineralized and things like that, but it's something we should be aware of. So it's not just all AI can do this and a little bit of worry about where the data's going, but we also do need to be aware of the climate side of things as well. But it's such a huge topic, and I could speak here for about 10 hours if you'd let me.
Well, I can book you a slot next year. And before next year as a standard webinar within this community of practice. Is there anything that anybody else does want to add? Otherwise, I will give you 20 minutes of your lunch break back. Silence from within the chat. Okay, well, Andrew, thank you. I do appreciate that. You coming and presenting this webinar for this community of practice, and do hope to see you again soon. And for everybody else, thank you for joining us. And this will be recorded, will be uploaded to YouTube, and you will be able to access a link via YouTube and or through the portal as I update this community of practice site. So have a lovely rest of the day, and see you all soon.
Great stuff. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.